Well, I don't know if you guys have heard this, but there's been a lot of talk going around town about the Gospel of Salvation Church here in town. Many of you may know Pastor Horton Orlantos. He leads this church. And since we've been talking about unity in this series, I thought it would be really important to share some of the details of this talk that has been going around. I've heard that a few people have noticed that some of the families in the church have, they've been moving around, they've been acting like there is something happening in the church, and when people are confronting them about the issue, they are not responsive. They've just been saying things like, you'll hear about it soon enough, or only time will tell. And I've even heard recently that somebody said that they've already picked out a location for a new church. And I don't really know what the validity of some of these claims are, but the way that it's looking, it looks like there's already been a church split that's happened. And that's not the only thing that people have been hearing. There's also been rumors of Pastor Orland has had some schisms with the board, and they're not seeing eye to eye, and no one really knows what the issue is, but depending on who you talk to about it, there's talk about it being money related or related to preaching or who's in charge of the vision of the church. And there's a lot of tension, and it's been building up for a long time. And here's the funny thing about all this is that some people think there's when people think there's a disagreement about something, you start to see it in everything, you know? So people are seeing it, they say, in facial expressions on stage, in coded announcements, side conversations, looking for proof of some of these claims that are being made. And then just this week, I heard that 2 staff members are planning to resign from this church. And there hasn't been an official announcement yet, but apparently someone saw them clearing out their offices recently. And one version of the story even says that they got better offers somewhere else, but another version says they just couldn't work with Pastor Toes anymore. Now, no one's asked them directly, but that hasn't stopped the whispers from going about. And with every retelling, it sounds more and more like it's already a fact that there's been a church split that's happened. But here's the truth about all of it. Every single thing that I told you, I made it up. Pastor Horton Orlantos does not exist. Gospel of Salvation Church does not exist. And none of these meetings or disagreements or anything else ever happened. And in fact, just to show you that I made it up, the name Pastor Horton Orlantos in the church Gospel of Salvation is actually an acronym for Hot Goss. Horton Orlantos and Gospel of Salvation, Hot Goss. Now, if you're honest, you probably were really invested in that story for a little bit. You're like, man, what's going on at this church? I want to know what the disagreement is. I want to know why these employees are leaving. And I'm going to tell you why you wanted to know. Because Proverbs 18:18 says, the words of a gossip are like choice morsels. They go down to the inmost parts. Because our flesh loves gossip. Our flesh loves gossip. We eat it up, just like this proverb says. And the verb in this proverb is actually more akin to the word devour. You devour gossip because it's not just that it's the finest of food, it's that it's tasty. You know when you get those bag of like salty potato chips when you really have a hankering for it and you just can't stop consuming it? I saw some of you guys look at each other like you know who that is in the family. But that's what it's like. It's like I just can't stop because it's so satisfying to me. It itches something that I want scratched. Here's a fun fact about gossip. When you share gossip or listen to gossip, it releases dopamine in your brain, which is actually the reward chemical that God wired into your brain. It's the same kind of chemical that would be released after you accomplish something big, like getting your doctoral degree or finishing a marathon or doing a hard workout. That same chemical is released when you gossip. Very interesting. We're going to dig into that a little bit more later as to why that is. But I'm just going to let you know now that I'm going to ruin gossip for every person in this room today. And you're going to be thankful for it when I'm done. So if you love gossip, if you're like, I'm not willing to give this thing up, you got about 60 seconds to get out of this room. Because if you don't get out in that time, it's going to be spoiled for you forever. Because here's the hard truth about gossip. Most people think gossip is about the person being spoken of, but it's not. Gossip isn't about them, it's about you. Gossip reveals the state of your heart. Gossip says more about you than the person you're talking about. Come on, I'm telling you, I'm going to ruin gossip for you. Every time you gossip, you're actually revealing something about the state of your own heart. So that's the illusion of gossip. You think, oh, I'm talking about this other person, or you hear somebody else talking about other people, but what's actually happening is, without them realizing it, as they're saying, hey, look at the pain in my heart. It's more about the person speaking than the person being spoken of. And I know this is a disgusting illustration, but I think it's actually very appropriate for this. Gossip is like vomit, because it's that disgusting to start with. But what is vomit? Vomit is you showing what's been inside of you the whole time. Now, you would never do this, but if you studied someone's vomit, you'd be able to tell what's been inside of them, what they've consumed. I know that's disgusting, but I want you to associate gossip with that image. That's why I chose to use that. I want you to associate those two things together because it's that disgusting. Gossip is that disgusting. And we live in a culture that actually puts gossip up as a form of entertainment. And so I think we've been desensitized to how bad gossip really is. Entertainment is driven through gossip. I mean, you have whole TV shows that are based on mere gossip about celebrities and whole magazines and people that make their living on Instagram and TikTok, and all they're peddling is gossip. So we've been desensitized to the effects of gossip. And we normalize this through pain management. So instead of identifying and confronting the pain in our lives, we actually do people management instead, which is gossip. That's talking about people instead of talking to God or confronting the issues we have with those people. So we sidestep the actual solution and we resort to people management through gossip instead. And what ends up happening is that more people then get involved in the pain. It's kind of like you have a wound, and every time you bring somebody else into it that's not the person that actually caused that pain to you, it's like you then take a scalpel and you say, here, let me cause the same wound in you too. So now you have multiple people that are all walking around with the wound that only you had originally. But here's the good news in all this. If you begin to reframe gossip the way that I'm trying to teach you today, then gossip will become like a check engine light to you. You know when your check engine light goes on in your car? Some of you are like, no, I just ignore that. I just have learned how to put it in my peripheral vision. I don't look at any of the lights on my heads-up display anymore. But your check engine light comes on because it's trying to tell you, hey, something's wrong. You need to address it. You need to dig a little bit deeper into your engine or whatever. Well, that's what gossip should function as. Instead of entertainment, it should be, let me enter into my heart for a second. Let me figure out what's going on inside of me. And it can actually be used for healing instead of causing more pain to other people. So today I want to look through a few stories in Scripture where gossip is actually used against Jesus. And it actually reveals the state of the people's hearts that are talking about Jesus behind his back. And they think they're hurting Jesus with their gossip, but really, as you're going to see, all they're doing is revealing the state of their own heart that's not been properly dealt with. So today, I'm going to give you 3 things that gossip really reveals. Is everyone still with me today? You can be joyful about this, okay? This is good news. This is good news. It might be a tough pill to swallow every now and then, but this is good news for us because we're digging deep. We're going to get into, look, people talk all the time. They're like, we want unity in the church, but they don't do the work to get there. This is the work you have to go through. People don't talk about gossip. You know why? Because they're doing it. Why would they call themselves out? So no one ever addresses it. No one talks about it. They just, let's just put it under the rug. Because it lets dopamine out. Like, why would I stop doing that? No, we're going to address this. Because if we're actually going to reach unity in the church, then we need to get to the heart of the things that cause disunity. And I think gossip is right up there on the leaderboard. So let's kill this thing today. You guys with me? All right, take out your knives. John 11, 45 to 48. Therefore, many of the Jews who had come to visit Mary and had seen what Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees called a meeting of the Sanhedrin. What are we accomplishing, they asked. Here is this man performing many signs. If we let him go on like this, everyone will believe in him, and then the Romans will come and take away both our temple and our nation. Let me give a little context to this. Previous to this moment, Jesus had raised Lazarus from the dead. And Lazarus was the brother of Mary and Martha. And so people heard about this, and rightly so, they want to come and see the outcome. They're like, I want to see Lazarus with my own eyes. I want to hug him. I want to speak to him. I want to see him in the flesh to know that Jesus did what I've heard people said that he did. And naturally, this made Jesus even more famous in the region. I mean, come on, that's some pretty crazy stuff. You're like, this dude raised someone from the dead on the 4th day, which, by the way, in Jewish custom, they believe the spirit left on the 3rd day. So for him to do it on the 4th day was, if it wasn't already impossible enough to raise someone from the dead, it was even more impossible because they would have said, well, his spirit's already left. There's no way this can be undone. But Jesus did it on the 4th day. So it didn't just catch the attention of the crowd, but it also caught the attention of a different crowd, the religious leaders. So much so that they called a special meeting to address the issue. Now, I just need to stop. We're going to have to laugh a little bit today, okay? We're going to have to laugh to lighten the weight of what we're talking about. Jesus raises someone from the dead, and their response is, we need to have a meeting, and we need to stop this. No, we can't have this happening here, right? I know you laugh at it, but it happens all the time to this day. Churches see revival, and other churches in the area are like, who do they think they are? They're doing the same thing. Instead of joining in and worshiping and praying, I'm telling you right now, if revival broke out at another church in Glen Ellyn, you'd be hearing about it here to celebrate it and praise it. And we'd be calling that pastor and saying, what can we do to help you guys out? But instead, other people, they get all hurt and insecure and they try to shut it down. So they're saying if Jesus keeps doing this, we will lose our jobs and our special relationship with the Roman government. This is literally what they're saying. So Jesus' success, what did it reveal in them? Because remember, gossip's not about you, or not about them, it's about you. So they're talking about Jesus behind his back. What did it reveal? It revealed their insecurity. Maybe you've heard gossip that sounds something like this. Oh, that person thinks they're such a great presenter, but I know that they got their slides all out of order and mixed up. Oh, she thinks she looks so good, but that hairstyle is so outdated. They think they're so good at singing, but no one's even listening to them. What is this actually revealing? It's revealing insecurity. It's revealing insecurity because insecurity gossips to shrink someone else so that I feel bigger. So let's go back to these religious leaders for a second. What was their idea to fix it? They wanted to stop him from continuing the very thing that revealed their insecurity. They wanted to cancel Jesus. That was their solution. If we can cancel Jesus, then I don't have to deal with the insecurity in my heart. I can just get the thing that triggers me to go away. When someone else has success in the very area that we feel like we don't have success in, it can become a trigger that makes us feel insecure. And if you're not careful, you can end up gossiping about it to other people as a way to manage the pain instead of confronting the issue head on. But here's the opportunity. Say that insecurity comes up. And look, we all, including myself, we all have areas of insecurity. We all have areas where we feel like we're not good enough, like we don't measure up, like we wish we could be like somebody else. What if every time that trigger, that poke happened, when somebody else did something you wish you could do? What if instead of us turning to the person next to us and saying, oh, whatever it is, what if instead, in the quietness of our own heart, we said, Jesus, man, I feel something on this right now. What if we said, Jesus, this insecurity, would you heal me of it? Instead of talking to them, we go before our Heavenly Father, who knows all things about us anyways. And we say, Lord, would you do something about this in my heart? Would you take me on a path of healing and heal this? Because you know what's amazing? Because I've seen this so many times in my life, guys. I'll stand before you and tell you right now, I'm probably the most insecure person in this room. But I've found that when I take those insecurities before the Lord, do you know what your Heavenly Father will begin to do? You want to hear the voice of your Father? Bring an insecurity before Him. Because He'll begin to shower you with affirmation. He'll begin to shower you with identity. He'll begin to tell you who you are in His eyes. And you know what will begin to happen? That very thing that was a wound in you, that was insecurity, will get healed up by the love of your Father. And then you're going to become people's cheerleaders. Oh man, I feel the presence of God on this so heavy right now. I'm speaking into something in your hearts right now. Some of you, God is waiting for you to be the cheerleader of the very people you've been talking about in your insecurity. And when He heals it, you're going to be running up giving them high fives instead of turning to the people next to you and talking about them. Come on. Yeah, we can clap about that. Because here's the funny thing. Success will never heal that insecurity anyways. That's the illusion. We think that if I just succeed in that area, it will heal the insecurity. It will not heal it. That's not the answer to your pain. Only God can get deep enough into your heart to pull out the roots of that insecurity. Okay, let's continue on. We're going to go now to Mark chapter 14, verses 55 to 65. Is everyone still with me here? I mean, I feel like there's already been some healing that's taking place. I really just sense the presence of the Lord on this right now. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for evidence against Jesus so that they could put Him to death. Come on, let's just laugh for a second. How dare He raise that man from the dead? Let's make him like Lazarus. Let's put him to death. But they did not find any. Many testified against him, but their statements did not agree. Then some stood up and gave this false testimony against him. We have heard him say, come on, there's a gossip phrase right there. We have heard, I will destroy this temple made with human hands, and in 3 days will build another not made with hands. Yet even their testimony did not agree. Another red flag for gossip. Then the high priest stood up before them and asked Jesus, are you not going to answer? Which means Jesus was there the whole time. What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again, the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus. "And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his clothes. "Why do we need any more witnesses?" he asked. "You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" They all condemned him as worthy of death. Then some began to spit at him. They blindfolded him, struck him with their fists, and said, "Prophesy." And the guards took him away, and they beat him. Why were they so angry? Why were they so angry at Jesus? Because the confession that Jesus gave violated their conviction about what they believed to be true. They believed that the Messiah would look completely different than how Jesus looked. So when Jesus said, "I am," to their question, it offended them. It offended their understanding of what the Messiah would look like, how the Messiah would behave, and how he would come to his own people. Maybe you've heard things like this before. "I heard so-and-so voted for fill in the blank. Can you believe her stance on immigration? Did you know that he has that flag hanging in front of his house?" Offense gossips to punish what violated my truth. Offense gossips to punish what violated what I believed to be true. And I'll add another thing to that. What violated my expectation. Because that's really the root of offense, is it violated your expectation of somebody else. So where do we see this crop up? We see it happen a lot when someone doesn't conform to our worldview, our political beliefs, or our cultural practices. We criticize them in the presence of people who do agree with us. Now, here's the difference between insecurity and offense for a moment. Insecurity is a lie that you believe about yourselves, and the success of others makes you feel threatened and vulnerable in that area. That's insecurity. Offense is when someone does or believes or says something that violates what you believe to be right or true. And that's that word blasphemy. That's why they called it blasphemy, because blasphemy is to confess something that you deeply believe cannot be true, or you believe the opposite of that. And that's why the high priests call out, they say, "This is blasphemy." But that's actually what's happening inside of us. When someone violates our beliefs, we scream internally, "Blasphemy. Blasphemy." And then sometimes we turn to other people that we know agree with us, and we say, "Blasphemy. Blasphemy." When we don't deal with an offense that someone else has caused us, it ends up spilling onto more people who then they end up taking offense at that person as well. When I was doing research on this, one person had a theory that this is kind of a way of maintaining a cultural status. And I can't think of a better place that happens than in the church. And that's not a compliment. Because what happens in churches is we get this is how we've always done it kind of attitude. And then when someone new comes in that doesn't line up with that doesn't dress the way that other people dress, they don't sing the way other people sing, they don't worship the way other people worship, we take it upon ourselves to kind of maintain the culture. And the way we do that is by saying, "Did you see the way they came dressed to church? Did you hear did you see?" What we're doing is we're using gossip to try to maintain the way we want the church to look. And I can't think of a better way to get someone to never come back to the church than to start talking to other people about them. Because it creates an outsider feeling. It creates an insider versus outsider feeling where they have to conform. Here's the thing. They have to conform to the gospel, yes. But they don't have to conform to any kind of cultural way that we may worship or sing or express ourselves. That's between them and the Lord, how they want to do that. And it's not our job to try to put someone down or maintain some kind of cultural standard here. That wasn't in my notes, but I just feel like I needed to talk about that for a second. And that's what's so silly about it, is it's like trying to put out a fire with gasoline. That's what it's really like. That's what gossip is. I'm going to try to stop this thing by pouring more gasoline on it because now you make the flame bigger by involving more people. So what do? Address your offense with the person with whom you're offended and not everybody else. Here's a great way to go about that. Say somebody does do something that doesn't line up with your way of what worship should look like. Maybe you should pull them aside and just say, hey, you know what? I noticed that you did this differently. I've never seen that before. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Because I guarantee you, if they share a little bit about their background with you or their story or something like that, you're going to actually appreciate the very thing that offended you in the first place. It's wild. You'll hear people will worship a certain way, and it may be totally radically different than how you worship. And if you listen to their story, you'll find out, they'll tell you, you know what? God has set me free from so much garbage in my life, I can't help but dance. So what offended you at first now becomes something that you can actually celebrate alongside of them with. Because you're like, oh, I get it now. You're dancing because you've been set free. And the one who sets free, when the shackles and the chains are gone, they know how to dance. They know how to dance like David danced. All right, that made me happy. Eventually, you will get what you want if you continue to speak about your offense with other people instead of the people that you're actually offended with. Because they will also become offended with that person just like you are. And that's what happens with the high priest. The high priest successfully makes a case for Jesus to be punished, and this is what happens next. Luke chapter 23, 1 through 2. Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we have found this man subverting our nation. Look at that word, subverting, as in doing it differently than we would do it. He opposes payment of taxes to Caesar and claims to be Messiah, a king. So here's a little backstory, interesting piece here. The Jewish religious leaders are taking Jesus to whom? The Roman government. The reason they're doing that is because the Jewish nation was occupied by Rome, and that came with certain rules that they had to abide by. And one of those rules was that the Jewish people were not allowed to execute anybody. The Romans had to do it for them. But the Romans didn't care if the reason for execution had to do with some Jewish custom or law that was broken. They could care less. But if it had to do with breaking a Roman law, well, then now they had a reason to execute. So the high priest is playing a little bit of a game here. They know that Pilate won't care if they say, well, he's blaspheming our religious laws. But he does know that Pilate would care if it was something that threatened his position. And that's what he's doing. So they accuse Jesus of calling himself a king and saying you should never pay taxes to Caesar, which are two things that would have gotten Pilate really upset. Because A, if Jesus was claiming to be a king, that means he was claiming to lead a revolt to overthrow the Romans. And Pilate was put in place by Caesar to maintain order in that region. And if things got out of control in that region, then Pilate would pay the price to Caesar because he didn't do his job. And secondly, he says this man's preaching to not pay taxes to Caesar, which is another huge problem because Pilate's job was to collect the taxes from the people and send it where? Off to Caesar. And Caesar wants his money. So they bring two offenses before Pilate that they know are going to get his blood boiling. Here's the funny thing. Jesus never said not to pay your taxes to Caesar. In fact, he upheld it miraculously. Some of you are like, I need a miracle to pay my taxes. Well, look, he pulled the coin out of a fish's mouth and then told Peter, go and deliver it to the temple. So you have some scriptural background to pray for that. But he never said not to pay taxes. He said to pay taxes. In fact, he says, give what belongs to Caesar unto Caesar, and give what belongs unto God unto God. So they're just straight up lying about Jesus. They're lying about him because it made them look good in Pilate's eyes. Validation gossips to rent status with someone else's reputation. What they were doing is they were using Jesus to try to make themselves look like, this is the funny thing about all this. Do you think those religious leaders were pro-taxes to Caesar? No. When they were behind closed doors, they're like, oh, I can't believe I got to pay this. They did not want to pay taxes to Caesar. But when Pilate's around, look at this guy. He's saying we shouldn't pay taxes to Caesar because they wanted to look good in Pilate's eyes. All of gossip is political. You don't realize it, but it's all a political move. Because you're trying to make yourself look good in somebody else's eyes. That's acting politically. And that's what these people were doing. They were playing a game with Pilate. It comes in ways of condemning others for certain behaviors to show that you're against that kind of behavior. There's a phrase for it. It's called virtue signaling. And it's happening all the time in the media. You condemn one party because it's a way of you saying, I stand over here. It's a political game. You're taking a political stance. And I don't mean it's always literally political. You guys get what I'm saying? My point is the way that that's played is a political maneuver. That is what politicking is. So they're lying about Jesus to win political favor. And all of this is because when we need validation, we try to open up doors for ourselves, and we do it through gossip. And that's what they wanted. They wanted to open up a door for themselves to execute Jesus because they wanted to silence what was causing their insecurity to scream the loudest. Because every time Jesus did something, they felt insecure because they wanted the praise of the people, and the right person was getting it because Jesus was getting their praise. So this is what we need to do in response to this today. Are you guys all good? Do we need to laugh again for a moment? Is there anything that we can just laugh about to set, lighten the mood again? Here's 3 things that we need to do. The first thing is, when you have that itch, like you want to turn to somebody else and talk about somebody, I want you to ask yourself, if I had the microphone in church on Sunday morning, would I say it? If you were standing in my shoes right now, would you say it? If the answer's no, then it shouldn't leave your lips. Now, I don't want to condemn you for a moment. Just because you had that thought doesn't mean that you're a bad person. But what causes sin is when you act on it. And the act is to let it leave your lips. That's when it becomes a sin. That's when it turns from an insecurity to an actual sin because now you're involving other people and you're causing harm in the process. So this is what you can do instead. You can do what we talked about earlier. You can just bring it before the Lord. Even in the quietness of your own heart. God, we can talk about this more later because I'm busy right now, but Lord, there's something inside of me that I need your help with. And then later on, journal. Journaling is a great way to just express on paper and process what actually triggered you. What brought you to that point? Why did you feel the way that you felt? And it helps you to process those things in the presence of the Lord. The second thing you're going to do is you're going to look inside. Ask yourself every time you're tempted to gossip, why? What pain am I trying to cover up? What validation am I trying to get? What expectation of mine was not met by somebody else? And the last thing is, you're going to flip your gossip. You're going to flip your gossip. If you want to get on the fast track to healing in your life, this is the way to do it. The very thing, especially when it comes to insecurity, the very thing that makes you insecure is the very area that you need to start to celebrate other people, encourage them in, give them compliments. So if you have this insecurity, find the very people, don't tell them, okay, that may trigger you in this. And every time that it happens, go up to that person and be like, hey, you killed that presentation today. I love the way that you did this. And you know what? Inside of you, everything might be screaming, no, I want that, I want that. But what you're doing is, oh man, this is so good. You're telling your flesh, submit. You're telling your flesh, submit to the Spirit. Because the Spirit is crying out to encourage. The Spirit is crying out, saying, lift that person up. But your flesh is saying, I want it all for me. But when you flip your gossip, you're telling your flesh, you're not in control. The Spirit of the living God is control within me. Would you stand to your flesh? I just want to share a personal story. I could have shared stories for every one of these points and multiple stories at that. But one for me that is a continued area that I have to press into. And praise God, I've found a lot of success in this area. I found a lot of breakthrough in this area over the years. But one of the most insecure times in my life is when I would walk into another church. Because I would walk into other churches, and you know what I would hear screaming inside of me? You'll never be able to run a church like this. You'll never be able to speak like that. You'll never be able to lead that way. You'll never be able to cultivate a culture like this. And if I'm honest with you, I still face those things to this day. But you know what the solution is? Every time I feel that, I go up to those pastors and I say, man, that message, that was so good. I love that point that you made, and that illustration you made was so impactful. Or if I listen to a sermon online and I know the pastor personally, I'll text them and say, I just heard your sermon, man. Thank you for stepping out. Thank you for being so bold in that area. Or if it's staff on the team, I'll compliment whatever you guys get what I'm talking about here. Because I'm flipping my gossip. I'm flipping my insecurity, and I'm pressing into the very thing that I wish I had for myself. And what's funny is you start to get healing. All of a sudden, that trigger's not the same anymore. Now I can walk into a church and I can leave and be like, you know what? Not once did I actually feel insecure in that meeting. I wasn't comparing myself to the pastor. I wasn't doing that because I'm finding healing in it. And I'm telling you today, gossip, it's not about them. It's about you. But the good news is, God can do something about it if you let Him. Here's the funny thing about gossip. If you say the same sentence to the person next to you, it's gossip. But if you say the same thing to God, it's intercession. It's vulnerability. It's inviting God into the insecurity.